great pleasure and blessing to have Abuna Gregory with us. I really, really wish there would be more people as we usually have, but maybe I heard that there is a gender reveal today and there are 3 birthdays, so maybe that's
the day before the Lent, so
the day before the Lent. We have food coming.
Everything today.
We have food coming, so you guys are not, you're gonna benefit from that. You're gonna eat most of it, but anyways, again, a reminder that we have a monthly meeting for Focus. This is the Focus English service for couples. We say couples up to 10 years of marriage. So those few years of marriage, up to 10.
What happens after 10?
Up to 10, because then after 10 o'clock,
you're on out.
no, because we want to focus on the young couples. So initially we said 0 to 5, and we still very much go after the 0 to 5, but we found that there have been people attending up to 10 years. We had one outlier that was 25 years of marriage, only one couple, in our last meeting. But this is a monthly meeting, so this is the community. We've had a monthly meeting, thank God, regularly since last September. Every last Sunday of the month, we run the Focus service. There will be a poll. If you are you on the WhatsApp? You're on the WhatsApp, the community WhatsApp. So if you like, we can, because we're going to be sending out a poll with a couple of options in terms of meeting times and special things that we are planning for the summer. So if you're interested to be added to the group to know what's happening for the couples, please let me know, and I'll add you. We'll send you the WhatsApp invitation. Today our topic is quite an important topic. It speaks of forgiveness, and it speaks of forgiveness, especially in the family and the couple's relationship. And I'm very blessed to have Abuna Gregory come in. And as you know, Abuna Gregory serves the church, the first church to be built after Saint Mary, which is the church of Saint Abu Sufyan and Saint Anthony. And it is despite the fact that I'm sure he has a lot to do, yet Abuna was kind enough to spare the time and to dedicate this time to be with our group today. My prayer is that you benefit much about this topic, and that those who will be watching it will also benefit later on as they go through it. And thank God we do upload these. Megan, you upload them, yes. So you can have access to the talk after, again, if you'd like to review it, and Megan can give you the details later as to where you can find those. We have our own YouTube channel, so you can always go there. Thank you.
I'll share with you, and Abuna Bishoy is like not only my elder, but whenever I have questions, I ask him, and so it's strange for me to stand in front and share, but and you thank God none of the words are my own. So as I present, I'm happy for anyone to ask questions or to disagree or to tell me what they think. And it's not a lecture, it's not a sermon. It's more of a discussion. So feel free. So today, as Abuna said, we'll be talking about forgiveness in the relationship, and it's a big issue. Because as you will see, that when we talk about forgiveness, before we can even discuss about forgiveness, we have to discuss hurt, like getting hurt in marriage. And this happens actually more often than we realize. And when the hurt is not addressed, it gets worse. So the first thing I'll share with you is these words. So these words about feelings, I share them a lot with the youth. I share them with everyone because it's very, very important. This is not only for marriage but in daily life. Feelings are, like to put it bluntly, feelings are a liar. Like feelings lie to us. So from the Bible we have, keep your heart with all diligence, for out of it springs issues of life. And you be careful of how you feel. The heart is deceitful. The heart is deceitful. above all things, and desperately wicked. Who can know it? So emotions and feelings easily mislead us. Like, actually, we were just in a priest's meeting, and the speaker was talking to us about something completely different. But he was sharing with us that we live in a postmodern world, which means basically, like, the world tells us to follow your heart, follow your feelings. But the reality is, like, that is not the truth. Feelings don't necessarily describe or lead you to the truth. They are very, very misleading. So as we talk about forgiveness and hurt, we have to just keep this in the back of the mind. I put this as the first slide, as a preamble, just so that we can keep it in the back of our mind. So hurt. So the first thing you need to understand that neither you or your spouse are perfect. I keep reminding people who have not been married yet, who are still looking for a spouse. Like, you're not going to find Mr. Right or Mrs. Right. You're not going to find someone who's going to save you. There is no one who's going to save you. There is no perfect person for you. You have no soulmate. It doesn't exist. The person that you've married, and in case you haven't realized it yet, they're not perfect. The person you married is not perfect. And by the way, neither are you. So eventually, as time passes, you will hurt your spouse. And your spouse will hurt you. Like, that's the reality, that's truth. You will hurt each other. You will do things that annoy or cause hurt to each other. And most of the time, it's unintentional. Like, you don't mean to hurt them, but you do. And often, and this is the part that makes it worse, that you don't even realize that what you've done has hurt them. So you hurt them, and they don't even know that, they've hurt you, and they don't even know that you feel hurt. Like, it doesn't even click in their mind. And this has a lot to do with where we come from. So, for example, how you were raised, how you deal with problems. You're not the same. And you both were not raised in the same house. Where you grew up. The role that each of your parents took in your life. So, for example, I'll give you a very simple example that I remember someone telling me that I never forgot. So, if you're just recently married, and your dad was the one who always did the groceries, for example, and so the woman, her dad always did the groceries, and for the man, his mom always did the groceries. So you get married, and then all of a sudden, there's no groceries in the house. So what do? You look at the other spouse and you say, "There's no groceries in the house." He's like, "I know, there's no groceries in the house," and everyone is saying to the other, "Tfaddal," right? So without even having a discussion, you've already got into some kind of argument. You've already miscommunicated because everyone is coming with different expectations. You know, I expect my mom to do it, so why aren't you doing it? And the woman is saying, I expect my dad to do it, so why aren't you doing it? So without even realizing, you are eventually going to hurt each other. And what you studied affects how you think. You know, people who study engineering are more likely to be more, step-by-step, logically thinking. Others might be more emotional or less critical in how they attack or deal with situations, which is fine. There is no right or wrong. But understanding those differences changes a lot in how you deal with each other. What stops us from saying sorry? Most of the time it's our pride. And it's not just the simple idea of pride, but and this is not just some random person I've met recently. So I don't want to get my spouse used to me saying sorry, right? So I don't say sorry from the beginning. I don't want her to think that every time I do something wrong, I'm gonna say sorry. So it's not only is it pride, it's long-term pride. We have and this is, when we talk about sin, we can't really say big and small, but when we talk about hurt, we can. Someone doing something small that bothers me, and it bothers me in a small way, right? But there are things that my spouse can do that can hurt me in a very big way, where it's very, very difficult for me to forgive. So, there is no such thing as a big and small. Both need to be dealt with. They exist as in, yes, the hurt I feel is small or is big, but both need to be addressed. And dealing with hurt is very vital to maintain the closeness in marriage. And I'll show you a little diagram in a minute. Because when we don't deal with it, hurt undermines, like it's like in the back of our mind, it undermines how close we are with each other. And I'll explain a little bit more in a second. Okay, so as we said, you're not perfect, which means that eventually you're going to argue. And if a couple has not yet argued, or not yet had a fight, and if it exists, they're in for a very big one very soon. Like, it's just getting worse. So you will have a fight, you will argue, you will disagree. Like, it's normal to disagree. It's not normal to not disagree. And very often, especially more for men, but it doesn't mean it's a rule, yani, we want to solve the problem, right? So like, we fought because of this, so now we have a way forward. We agree on a way forward. Okay, so now we've agreed that I'll do the groceries one week and you'll do the groceries the other week. We've solved the problem, right? But there's an underlying hurt that exists. Like, something brought us to not just like have a problem and then we sit critically and think about it and we do a diagram of solutions and then we come with a solution. Like, that's not reality. Reality is, we had a problem, we argued, we said words were exchanged, feelings have passed through each one. So there's an underlying hurt that is involved. So yes, you solved the problem, but have you dealt with the hurt? Have you dealt with the feeling or the emotional trauma, if we may, that the other person has gone through? And often no. And the problem with no is that hurt is carried for a long time. Hurt is carried for a very long time. So here we have like a little diagram. When we first get married, we try to build trust with each other. And eventually that leads to being open and vulnerable. Like a healthy marriage, there are two people who are very vulnerable with each other. And that vulnerability allows us to have intimacy with each other, to become very close. And as we live together, eventually we will hurt each other. If we deal with the hurt, we can continue on with healing, which builds even more trust. Like, not only have I done something wrong and we've hurt, but we've dealt with it, so we can continue to learn to trust each other. Whereas if I don't deal with it, I begin to go, in this case, counterclockwise on this diagram, right? I begin to lose intimacy. I begin to become less vulnerable. And then I begin to lose trust in my spouse. So hurt never goes away. Okay, we'll do a little exercise together. So when we have a little argument, when we have a little problem, and we hurt each other, there are usually two types of, like, I'm going to give you 5, but the first one, or I'm going to give you 4. The first one is anger. Is the first emotion that we feel, like, always. And then some people display anger different than others. So here's 2. It's like, you can think of it like a spectrum. One, so they're both angry. On one side you have the uncontrolled anger, and on the other side you have the withdrawn anger. So the uncontrolled anger is, you hurt me, now I'm going to let you know. I'm going to come out, I'm going to charge, I'm going to tell you how I feel and how I'm upset, and we're going to deal with this right now. And there's going to be action. I'm going to move, I'm going to stand up, I might even shout. And some people, I'll throw something across the room, right? It's a physical charging, I'm doing this now. And then you have people who are very angry and they become withdrawn, right? They hide. So they stop engaging. Don't talk to me, right? I'm gonna go to my room. I don't want to see you. I'm withdrawn. I'm gonna ignore you. I'm not happy. I'm sulking. I'm self-pity. I'm alone, right? So we give these 2 very fun names, Yani. So we have the rhino and the hedgehog. Both are useless. Both are ineffective, right? Because both never solve the problem. The rhino wants to charge. He sees like someone attacking. He's angry. He charges, right? The hedgehog sees someone attacking. He curls up and he puts spikes, right? Don't touch me. Don't come near me. Don't talk to me. Leave me alone, right? Both useless. So let's we'll spend a few minutes, the couples can share, كده, and decide if you are a rhino or a hedgehog, and if your spouse is a rhino or a hedgehog. So I'll give you guys 2 minutes, كده, and discuss together, and both of you have to agree on it. Who's the which one of you are rhinos or hedgehogs? But I'm going to make you understand how you made me feel. So hurt for hurt, rejection for rejection. That's very common. Eventually, when that's not dealt with, we get into the idea of fear. Being unable to stop sharing, to communicate. We stop being open with each other because we don't want to go through that hurt again. Like you hear sometimes couples say, I can't talk to them about this topic because they just go crazy, right? So that's fear, right? They no longer are able to communicate because for fear of getting hurt. And then guilt. So you walk around with guilt, like you said something, you did something, and now you have guilt. So making a cup of tea was advice that someone gave me before I was married. Meaning what? Understanding who your spouse is. So now you've understood who's the rhino and who's the hedgehog, right? And this is important when it comes to dealing with problems. So now you're in the middle of a fight, right? And you know that you're a rhino, so you start charging, right? Or you know that you're a hedgehog, so you start running away. The rhino wants to deal with it now, right now. So we use like a code word. Let's make a cup of tea, right? Because it takes time for the kettle to boil, right? It takes time for the kettle to boil. So by making a cup of tea, you're kind of like, you stop, you pause, take a time out on the argument, and then each one can collect their thought. The rhino can calm down. The rhino can learn to take a step back. It's possible, right? I know that I'm going to charge, but before I charge, I'm boiling the water. So while the water is boiling, I'm going to relax. I'm going to simmer my emotions. I'm going to allow myself to put my thoughts in order so I don't react in a very physical way. The hedgehog, who doesn't want to talk, can take a few minutes of the water, the kettle to boil, to bring themselves up to be able to share, to be able to talk. So dealing with it, you can use this code word, and this worked for us very well. Yani, I'm going to make a cup of tea. So that you're in the middle of a fight, you can say, you know what, let's make a cup of tea. Everyone, time out, pause, until we can come and deal with this, because you need to deal with it. You don't need to deal with it at that very second, but you need to deal with it. I heard this quote, and I really loved it. Emotions are never buried dead, but always buried alive. So whenever we fight and someone is hurt, if you don't deal with it, you are burying the emotion, but it's not buried dead. It is buried alive. Meaning what? Meaning sometimes you, in, 1, 2, 5, 10 years, you'll have another fight. And in that other fight, the other person's going to bring up, remember when you did this? You're like, why are you bringing this up? And why are you being unreasonable? We already solved this problem. You solved the problem, but you didn't deal with the hurt. You didn't deal with the emotion or the pain that the other person went through. So the emotion that is buried alive comes back out. So how it gets worse? How can we make fighting even worse? Some tips. I don't share that I'm hurt. Remember we said that sometimes we hurt each other and the other person has no idea. If you don't share, they're not going to read your mind. I don't recognize that I need to say sorry. The other person told me they're hurt. Or I know that what I did is wrong. I need to recognize, I need to force myself to say sorry. But what if I don't feel like I want to say sorry? What do I do? What do you say in slide number 1? What's the problem with that argument? Feelings are a liar, right? Deceitful. Don't let feelings drive your choices. I cushion my sorry. So I'm going to say sorry, but I'm going to say I'm sorry, but I did this because it's your fault. I'm sorry because if you didn't do this, I wouldn't have done something wrong, right? So my sorry is like cushioned with an excuse, and part of that excuse is your fault. I don't take the time to understand my spouse. So understanding their background, understanding how they deal with pain. Are they gonna charge or are they gonna hide? So I don't take time to understand my spouse. All I want to do is solve the problem. I use negative tone. What's wrong with you now? Right? Not very helpful. So I'm using the right words, but I'm using the wrong tone. Right? Body language. When someone is talking to me and they're saying, I feel like this, I feel like that, and I'm just rolling my eyes and I'm like, okay. Right? So body language. You're not receptive to what they're saying. Okay, we'll do another exercise to force yourselves to know your partner a little better. So I put some statements down. When I am hurt, what do? And I want you guys to share. So tell me, you can tell each other if this is true or false. So when I'm hurt, I keep the peace. I'm not going to tell you how I feel because I don't want to start a fight. So I'd rather keep the peace. I overreact. I fail to admit and I get angry. I give you the silent treatment. I blame others. I shut down. I run and hide. So I'll let you guys read these. I'll give you 5 minutes to let you read them and to think about and discuss together. Don't worry, I'm not going to ask you guys afterwards what your personality is. Let's take 5 minutes and go to the person's perspective when you will argue, right? Or more importantly, to think of your own perspective, right? So like, for example, when I'm hurt, I run and hide, right? So as Abuna mentioned, he was telling me, they're all negative, right? None of them are positive. Meaning what, like, if I do that, I should recognize that I have a tendency to give the silent treatment, to run and hide, whatever. And I don't want to do that, right? I want to communicate how I feel. I want to force myself to communicate how I feel. So what we should not do, allow feelings to drive our choices. So often we give excuses, like I was angry, I threw this, I did that, I said this because I was angry. So like as if the anger gives me a pass to do whatever, right? So we cannot use feelings to drive our choices. Not because I was angry gives me the right to do whatever I want. I don't feel loved. Very dangerous, right? I don't feel loved. Because why is it dangerous? Because love is not a feeling, right? Or it should not be a feeling, right? So yes, this is basically saying I need more romance, but that's one thing versus the idea of like you live in you want to be in a loving relationship, but loving relationship as a verb, like I am loving them. Right? Not I want to make you feel loved. Not the same. Right? I want to give my life to the other person and them to give me their life, not as a feeling, but as truth, as a verb. I don't want to say something hurtful in the middle of an argument. Like I want to be careful. Like I want to recognize that I'm angry or I'm sad, and that I'm gonna say I might say something hurtful, just so that I can provoke the feeling of the other person, right? So like it goes back to the anger part. So like I'm going back to retaliation. Like I can say something mean, not because I believe it, but because I know by saying it is going to annoy them, right? The most common one is like, you're just like your mother, you're just like your father, right? Like, your father was a bad person and you're just like your father. Or you're just, that's a painful one, right? Because nobody wants to hear that. What we should not do, deal with the symptoms and ignore the hurt. So solve the problem and move on. Just solve the problem and move on. Or cover the hurt with distraction. this is like, we can do this on our own. So I solved the problem, I moved on. But now, like, I'm gonna buy, like, I'm not gonna say sorry, I'm gonna buy her a gift. Right? I'm not gonna deal with how she feels, just here. Or I'm going to show affection. I'm not gonna say sorry. I'm not gonna deal with her feelings. I'm just gonna show her affection, or him affection. I'm gonna go on a shopping spree. I feel depressed. I'm gonna go on a shopping spree. Makes me feel better, right? Our feelings are driving our choices. I don't solve the problem, instead I deal with the symptoms. So how often should we forgive? So here Peter is talking about his brother, but it's the same for our spouse. Then Peter came to him, Jesus, and said, Lord, how often shall my brother sin against me and I forgive him? Up to 7 times. And Peter was saying, like, 7 is a lot. 7 is a lot. Up to 7 times. Jesus said to him, I do not say to you up to 7 times, but up to 70 times 7. Right? Like, stop counting. Stop counting. Forgiveness is not, like, this is whether it's a spouse or not, but it applies obviously very strongly in marriage. Forgiveness is not demanding change before we forgive them. I'll forgive you when you start doing the dishes without me asking you. Right? That's when I'll forgive you. I'll forgive you when you do this. That's not forgiveness. It's not a gift or a favor. Like, as if I'm going to do you a favor by forgiving you. That's not forgiveness. Or to pretend like, you know what, I forgive you. I'm going to ignore the hurts, I'm going to ignore the pain, it doesn't matter. Forgiveness is not a brokered deal. Okay, we're going to sit together and you're going to do this and I'm going to do that, and khalas, I'll always forgive him. You're not creating a deal here. Right? You have to deal with the person. Forgiveness is not time alone that will heal the issue. So just like, they say time heals all wounds, but this doesn't work in marriage, right? Like, if you don't deal with it now, or deal with it later, if you don't deal with it now, you will deal with it later. So you can't just say like, okay, she's upset, I'll just ignore it, pretend it doesn't exist, and eventually with time, she'll forget about it, or he will forget about it. Forgiveness is letting go. Forgiveness is letting go. Forgiveness is not counting. Forgiveness is communicating our feelings to our spouse. You want to start forgiveness? Start talking, start sharing, start being honest. Start telling them, this is how I feel. This is the pain that I'm going through. And when I say the word, this is how I feel, I don't mean like, as I was talking before about how feelings drive us. I'm saying like, share and communicate the pain that the situation has caused. Because whether they know it or not, they might not understand the extent of how you feel or how it affects you. So you need to, and they will not be able to read your mind. In any way, the same way that I felt punished, right? If God wants to deal with you in a different way to make you realize, let it be to God. But not for me to be the one who offers you the pain. So you release, you say, it doesn't matter. Or when I say it doesn't matter, I don't need justice, let's say. Leaving the consequences to God and God alone. Choosing not to hold the actions against our spouse. Because this is what Christ did for us. Forgive them, Father, for they do not know what they do. Not punish them equally, Father, because of what I need fairness. Right? This, like, we want to deal with our spouse as Christ dealt with us. Not looking for retaliation, but looking to let it go. This is a hard one. Forgiveness is a choice, not a feeling. Forgiveness is a choice, not a feeling. Like, I don't say I don't feel like I want to forgive you. Instead, like, I feel pain, but I choose to forgive you. Forgiveness is a process that is often repeated. Like, don't think that just because they hurt you and you talked about it today, that it's not going to happen tomorrow. It will happen again. When we forgive, when we do not forgive, we are the ones who punish ourselves. When I don't forgive someone, whether it's my spouse or someone else, actually I'm punishing myself, not the other person, because forgiveness is not a gift that I give to someone else. Forgiveness is a gift I give myself. Because when I don't forgive, what do? I have bitterness, I have resentment, I have anger, and I put myself in the prison of those feelings. Every time I see them, I feel resentment. Every time I see them, I feel anger. Same thing in marriage. Like you are punishing yourself by not forgiving your spouse. So what we need to do is to live it. To live this process of forgiveness. So to number one, to build in your house or have your house as a place that you can communicate. It should not, no one should feel guilty or sad or fear to share their emotion, to share how they feel. It should be a house open to communicate. And likewise, you should be ready to apologize. Don't expect instant healing. It's not a switch. No one is a switch. Right? Just because I share how you feel and you say sorry doesn't mean I don't feel it anymore. So there's a process. And hurt is what pushes us away. Saying sorry and forgiving brings us back together, like the diagram I explained. So recognize your spouse's personality, like the two slides that we talked about, rhino, hedgehog, and the examples I gave you. Make the first move. This is a big one. Make the first move. Whether that's you saying sorry or you sharing how you feel. Make the first move. Like, don't walk around the house trying to get the other person to talk to you. Just make the first move. No one can read your mind. No one can read your mind. Take responsibility and admit. And the strongest word you can tell anyone, whether it's your spouse or anyone else who feels angry towards you, is to say sorry. Because you disarm them. Like, a lot of times when someone comes and attacks us, we feel like we need to not only attack them, but we need to logically beat them at their game. But when we come and say sorry, everything calms down a bit. And then afterwards, if you need to talk and discuss and look forward, that's fine. But saying sorry is a very powerful tool. It's very hard to say sorry because our pride stops us. But it is a very, very powerful tool. And each of you should include in your spiritual life time for reflection, repentance, and confession. Whether this is with your spouse or not, we all need to reflect on the wrongs, the things that we could have done better each day. And glory be to God forever and ever. Amen. So any questions? Changes all that. It doesn't work. So he has to change, and she also has to feel secure in her marriage, right? He doesn't have to tell me every single day for me to know that I love him or that he loves me. So there has to be a middle ground.